What if the secret to feeling younger, sharper, and more energized wasn't in some anti-aging serum, but had been sitting in jars on kitchen counters for thousands of years? Most people are dropping $60 on gut health drinks and probiotic pills. Meanwhile, entire communities in rural Korea and mountain villages in Bulgaria have been eating fermented foods daily for generations, and they show some of the lowest rates of inflammatory disease on the planet. This isn't wellness folklore. Researchers studying these populations are finding things modern labs are only now catching up to. Today, 20 fermented superfoods that science says can slow your biological clock, ranked from impressive to absolutely game-changing. Stick around, because number 14 is something most people scrape off their plate without a second thought. Turns out it feeds your gut bacteria more effectively than almost any probiotic supplement on the market. And number 19? It's been in East Asian kitchens for over 1,000 years. Modern researchers studying cellular aging are now looking at it with completely fresh eyes. If you want science-backed food wisdom like this every week, subscribe right now. Alright, let's get into it. 1. Kefir, the fizzy drink that outworks a multivitamin. Caucasus mountain herders carried fermented milk on long journeys, not for taste, but because it kept them strong when fresh food ran out. Kefir packs a dense colony of live bacterial strains, and studies link regular intake to measurable increases in microbial diversity, a key marker of a younger, more resilient gut. In a world where ultra-processed diets quietly wipe out gut bacteria one meal at a time, that diversity-boosting effect matters more now than it did for those herders centuries ago. Traditional use. A small glass each morning. Nothing fancy, just a habit that quietly did its job for generations. 2. Traditional yogurt, the original gut probiotic. Long before probiotic was a marketing word, cultures across the Mediterranean and Middle East ate thick, tangy yogurt daily, not as a snack, but as a staple. Live culture yogurt delivers billions of beneficial bacteria per gram, and research connects regular intake to lower inflammatory markers tied to heart disease and metabolic decline. Chronic low-grade inflammation now drives nearly every major age-related illness. That daily spoonful is doing more than most people realize. Traditional use. Plain, unsweetened, with herbs or olive oil. Simple but never empty. 3. Sauerkraut, the forgotten cabbage with a cellular punch. European sailors packed barrels of fermented cabbage for long sea voyages, not for flavor, but to prevent illness when fresh produce ran out. Sauerkraut is rich in butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid that directly fuels the cells lining your colon and helps repair a weakened gut barrier. In a world full of processed foods that quietly destroy that same barrier, sauerkraut's repair function is more relevant now than it was for sailors stuck at sea for months. Traditional use. A small spoonful alongside meals. Not a garnish, a tool. 4. Kombucha, the ancient tonic getting a modern lab retest. Centuries ago, this fizzy fermented tea traveled East Asian trade routes, called a vitality tonic, not understood scientifically, just trusted through repetition. Kombucha's fermentation produces organic acids and beneficial bacteria, and early research suggests it may support liver function and regulate blood sugar after meals. In a world where sugary sodas dominate every shelf, kombucha's low-sugar, gut-friendly profile is more relevant now than when it was just a roadside trade good. Traditional use. Slightly tart, often homemade, shared between households. 5. Miso, the umami paste hiding a cellular reset button. In Japanese households, miso soup has opened the day for over 1,000 years, not as a luxury, but as a quiet daily ritual. Miso contains spermidine, a compound shown in research to help trigger autophagy, your body's built-in process for clearing out damaged cellular material. In a world where stress, poor sleep, and processed food accelerate cellular waste buildup, miso's role in supporting that cleanup matters more today than it did for households who simply made it part of breakfast. Traditional use. A spoonful dissolved into hot water with seaweed and tofu. 5 minutes, same as always. 6. Tempeh, the protein source that quietly outdigests meat. In Indonesian villages, Tempeh was developed generations ago to stretch soybeans into something more nutritious and easier to digest, practical, not trendy. Fermentation breaks down compounds that make soy hard to digest, increases nutrient bioavailability, and produces natural probiotics along the way. In a world where plant-based eating is rising but often poorly executed, tempeh's digestibility and nutrient density make it more relevant now than it was as a humble village staple. Traditional use: sliced, pan-fried until golden, added to rice dishes. Simple preparation, serious nutrition. 7. Natto, the sticky soybean Japan's centenarians swear by. In parts of Japan with the highest concentrations of people living past 100, natto has been a breakfast staple for generations. Not because anyone called it a superfood, but because it was simply what was on the table. Fermentation generates an enzyme studied for its potential role in healthy blood flow, plus vitamin K2, a nutrient tied to bone and cardiovascular health that's almost entirely absent from the modern Western diet. Most people are K2 deficient without even knowing the nutrient exists. Natto has been quietly filling that gap for centuries. Traditional use: spooned over rice, stirred until stringy, eaten first thing in the morning. An acquired taste with a long track record. 8. Pickled ginger, the palate cleanser with an inflammation angle. Long before it sat beside sushi as an afterthought, pickled ginger was used in East Asian kitchens to aid digestion after rich meals, and to preserve food safely before refrigeration existed. The pickling process preserves ginger's active compounds, studied for their potential to ease digestive discomfort and modestly reduce inflammatory markers. In a world where heavy, processed meals are the norm, pickled ginger's digestive support role is more useful now than it was as a simple side dish. Traditional use: thin slices, eaten between courses or alongside fatty foods, small but functional. 9. Fermented black garlic, the sweet, dark twist on an ancient remedy. Garlic has been used medicinally across cultures for thousands of years. The fermented black version, aged slowly until it turns dark and almost sweet, takes that further. Fermentation increases certain antioxidant compounds compared to raw garlic, and early studies suggest they may support healthy cholesterol levels and reduce oxidative stress. In a world where oxidative stress drives visible and cellular aging, black garlic's antioxidant boost is more relevant now than it was to the artisans who first experimented with aging techniques. Traditional use: eaten whole like a chewy dark candy, on its own or stirred into sauces. 10. Sourdough bread, the loaf that breaks the carbs are bad rule. Before commercial yeast existed, every loaf was made the slow way: wild yeast, bacteria, days of fermentation from start to finish. That slow process breaks down much of the gluten and reduces blood sugar impact compared to most commercial loaves, while producing organic acids linked to better mineral absorption. In a world where blood sugar spikes from refined carbs are a daily occurrence, sourdough's gentler effect is more relevant now than it was for bakers who simply had no faster option. Traditional use: thick slices, slightly charred, with olive oil alongside a meal. Bread that does more than fill you up. 11. Fermented fish sauce, the pungent staple hiding longevity compounds. Across Southeast Asia, fish sauce has been made the same way for centuries: fish and salt, left to ferment for months until it breaks down into a deeply savory liquid used in nearly every dish. That long fermentation produces amino acids and peptides, some studied for their potential role in supporting healthy blood pressure. In a world drowning in ultra-processed flavor additives, fish sauce's naturally fermented amino acid profile is more relevant now than it was to cooks who used it simply because nothing tasted as good. Traditional use: a few drops into broths, dipping sauces, or marinades, invisible but doing real work. 12. Fermented olives, the snack hiding a healthy fat delivery system. Mediterranean households have cured olives in brine for generations, originally just to make a bitter fruit edible. That curing process preserves the olive's natural polyphenol, plant compounds studied for antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. In a world where snacking usually means empty calories, fermented olives offer a rare combination of healthy fats and polyphenol that's more relevant now than it was to households just trying to make something bitter taste good. Traditional use, whole, alongside bread and cheese, humble but quietly potent. 13. Kimchi, the spicy side dish doing more than you think. In Korean households, kimchi has been made the same way for generations. Cabbage packed with spices, fermented in clay jars buried in the ground, sometimes for months. That process produces a wide range of beneficial bacteria alongside compounds studied for reducing inflammation and supporting immune function. In a world where immune health is a daily concern for most people, kimchi's immune-supportive bacteria are more relevant now than they were to households simply preserving cabbage through winter. Traditional use. A small portion alongside nearly every meal. Quiet, consistent, always there. 14. Fermented mustard greens. The one most people scrape off their plate. Here it is, the one I teased at the start. Across rural China and Southeast Asia, fermented mustard greens have long been a side dish, sour, slightly funky, and usually the first thing pushed to the edge of the plate by anyone unfamiliar with them. Despite being overlooked, the fermentation produces a dense population of beneficial bacteria, and some research suggests these greens may support gut diversity more effectively than many fiber-rich vegetables eaten raw. In a world obsessed with fiber supplements and powdered greens, this humble side dish may be doing the job more efficiently than the products people are paying for. Traditional use. A small handful stirred into rice or soup. Easy to miss, easy to underestimate. 15. Fermented soybean paste. Doenjang, the deeper, earthier cousin of miso. In Korean kitchens, large clay pots of soybean paste have sat outdoors fermenting for months. A process passed down through families long before anyone understood what was happening inside those pots. That slow fermentation breaks down soybeans into a dense source of amino acids and beneficial compounds, including the same polyamines found in miso studied for cellular renewal. In a world where convenience foods have replaced slow-fermented staples almost entirely, doenjang's amino acid and polyamine content is more relevant now than it was to families who simply waited months for a pot to be ready. Traditional use. Dissolved into stews with vegetables and tofu, patient food, made by people who weren't in a hurry. 16. Fermented buttermilk. The tangy drink that outlasted refrigeration. In rural India and parts of Eastern Europe, fermented buttermilk was a daily staple long before refrigeration existed. A way to use milk before it spoiled, made by churning soured cream and drinking what remained. That fermentation leaves behind beneficial bacteria and bioactive peptides, some studied for their potential role in supporting healthy blood pressure. In a world where most people reach for sugar-loaded electrolyte drinks with ingredient lists nobody can pronounce, fermented buttermilk offers a simpler version of the same combo, minus the chemistry. Traditional use. Served cold, with a pinch of salt or cumin, refreshing, and never wasted. 17. Fermented rice water. The overlooked byproduct with surprising potential. In parts of Southeast Asia and Japan, the water left over from rinsing and fermenting rice was never thrown away. It was saved, used in cooking, sometimes applied topically, long before anyone studied why. Fermentation concentrates certain antioxidants and amino acids otherwise locked inside the grain, and early research has looked at its potential role in skin and gut health. In a world where people pay for skincare products built around fermented rice extracts, the original version was sitting in kitchens for free, because nothing was meant to go to waste. Traditional use, reused in cooking or as a rinse, resourcefulness that modern labs are now trying to bottle. 18. Fermented chili paste. Gochujang, the slow-aged condiment with a deeper purpose. In Korean villages, large earthenware pots of chili paste were left to age for months, sometimes years, tended carefully as part of a household's food supply. Not for heat, for depth that couldn't be rushed. That long fermentation breaks down starches into natural sugars and produces beneficial bacteria alongside compounds studied for antioxidant properties. In a world of mass-produced hot sauces loaded with preservatives, gochujang's slow fermentation offers something those products simply can't replicate. Traditional use. Stirred into stews, marinades, or eaten with rice, bold, but built on time, not shortcuts. 19. Pickled tea leaves. Lahpet, the ancient snack getting fresh scientific attention. Here's the second one I teased. Fermented tea leaves, eaten as food, not brewed as a drink, have been served in Myanmar for over 1,000 years. Tea leaves packed tightly, fermented for weeks, then tossed into a salad with nuts, sesame seeds, and lime. That's lahpet. The fermentation produces beneficial bacteria alongside compounds related to those in green tea, but in a form that retains, and in some cases concentrates, certain antioxidants. Researchers studying caffeine metabolism and cellular aging are now looking at fermented tea preparations with renewed interest. The fermentation process appears to change how the body absorbs these compounds compared to brewed tea. In a world saturated with supplements promising cellular protection, this centuries-old salad may have been doing something similar long before anyone had a name for it. Traditional use. Shared with guests, eaten at the end of a meal. Not rushed, not packaged, not sold in a capsule. Number 20 requires the most careful handling. Fermented dairy made with raw, unpasteurized milk. This is not a blanket recommendation to go drink raw milk. It's not an argument that pasteurization is the enemy. It's an honest look at why this keeps showing up in research. In places where raw milk has been fermented for generations, using methods refined over centuries, the fermentation itself does much of the safety work. Live cultures outcompete harmful bacteria. The result is a product with higher microbial density and diversity than most pasteurized, store-bought versions. Some studies on traditional fermented raw dairy find associations with lower rates of allergic and inflammatory conditions. Researchers are careful to note it's correlational, tied to a whole lifestyle, not one ingredient pulled out and bottled. That's exactly why it sits at number 20, not number 1. Context matters enormously. A product made under controlled, traditional fermentation conditions is a very different thing from raw milk bought without any of that oversight. Same process, completely different risk profile. The real takeaway is narrower and more useful. Fermentation itself is doing more biological work than most people give it credit for. Live cultures, time, patience. That's true whether the milk is raw or pasteurized. For almost everyone, the safer entry point is a high-quality live culture yogurt or kefir made from pasteurized milk, which still delivers the bulk of what the research actually points to. 20 foods. Centuries, in some cases thousands of years, of continuous use. Passed down not through research papers, but through kitchens, grandmothers, and households that simply kept doing what worked. The people who relied on these foods weren't tracking gut diversity scores or timing meals around autophagy windows. They weren't taking polyamine supplements. They were doing something much simpler, eating food that had been given time. Time to ferment. Time to develop. Time to become something more than the sum of its ingredients. Modern science keeps arriving at conclusions that kitchens already knew. A jar of kimchi left for weeks quietly supports the immune system. A bowl of miso eaten every morning for 1,000 years nudges the body's cells to clean house. A glass of kefir drunk without a second thought by mountain herders does more for gut diversity than most products sold specifically for that purpose today. None of this required a breakthrough. It required patience, the kind that doesn't fit into a modern routine built around convenience and speed. Fermentation is the opposite of instant. It's food that says not yet for days, weeks, sometimes months, and rewards that waiting with something a fast process simply cannot replicate. Modern science didn't discover these things, confirmed them. Before you go, quality matters more here than with almost any other food on this list. A jar of kimchi naturally fermented for weeks and a jar labeled kimchi, that's just cabbage soaked in vinegar, are not the same product. Same goes for yogurt. Many of the most popular brands are pasteurized after culturing, which means the live bacteria are dead before they reach your spoon. Drop a comment below. Which one surprised you most? Are you team dairy-based ferments, team fermented veggies, or team funky pastes and sauces? I read every single one. If this was useful, subscribe and hit the bell. New video every week, and there's a lot more like this coming. See you in the next one.